You're listening to the Reinvest Podcast, where each Tuesday we will show you how to reclaim, reconnect, and refocus your life by bringing you the top real estate professionals in the industry. We'll pull back the curtain so you can implement these tools and tactics to build generational wealth. Your hosts, Garrett Gatton and Seth Ciminillo. Hey guys, thanks for jumping on to another episode of the Reinvest Podcast, where we get to show you guys all the awesome things about real estate investing and how to build some generational wealth, which takes time. It takes time, but it is possible. And we are bought and sold on real estate as the vehicle to do that. So I've got an exciting guest in episode today for you. One of the biggest pain points that anybody's going to have to solve or figure out or address in real estate investing is the dreaded property management term.
It's true. And everyone has a good story. Everyone has a good story of how it didn't go well, whether it was like a turnover that lasted months or years or a contractor. We've heard stories of contractors that literally took their money and then just left. And they were investing out of state and, didn't have the checks and balances like they should. And so everyone has a story, or everyone's family member has a story of why you shouldn't invest in real estate. And a lot of them revolve around tenants.
It is.
So almost all of them revolve around property management.
Yeah, and just a few painful stories here. We self-manage some commercial stuff, and then we work with a property management company who, by and large, does a great job, operating that. But even if you're having a property management company, you're still going to oversee them to ensure that they're, operating your asset in a way that's profitable and good for it. So we've, Seth and I, we've been around the block a time or two to see a couple painful stories. So I'm excited today because our guest, Chase Minniefield. Chase, how are you doing?
Good. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Man, super excited to get into today. I think this can be a really relevant topic for people to talk about prop tech and automating that process for property management. But before we get into that, you have a pretty unique story. First of all, we're doing this podcast. You're live from Bermuda.
Yeah.
So there's already, kind of who is this man, Chase Minniefield, right? So give us a little context to your career. Tell us about the NFL. Tell us about how you got started in real estate. And I think we're going to have fun today.
Yep. Sounds good. So I'm born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky. I am an athlete turned entrepreneur is how I kind of see it. I know you guys are in Northeast Ohio. So my dad, he's a former Cleveland Browns, all-time great is what they would usually call him up there.
Wow.
Now your dad, is it Frank?
Yep, Frank Minnifield.
Frank Minnifield.
So he was with the Dog Pound days. Actually, the originator of that term, Dog Pound, him and Hanford Dixon. So
no way.
That's a little bit of a Northeast Ohio trivia question.
Wow.
So that's my household. That's what I grew up in. And anybody knows his story knows it's a story of resilience and perseverance. So that's kind of what I embody. I'd say kind of like a little bit of that blue collar mindset. When it came to sports and also into my entrepreneurial journey, I went to the University of Virginia, didn't play for the Cleveland Browns, and had an opportunity to play for the Washington Redskins at the time, now the Commanders. Played 3 seasons there, then ultimately started my first business, got into real estate, not from the investing or operating side, but from the contracting side, general contracting. So actually started my first company called Helping Hands out of the NFL, which was a company that helped universities flip their dorm units around the country. So if anybody's looking for an interesting business model, it's still very, very much needed from that perspective.
Right.
I've worked my way out of that space because of the tough and the heartache and
dude, it's volume and it's fast-paced contracting work. You're in, you're out, it's down and dirty, right?
Yeah. It's that.
You've got deadlines.
Everybody leaves at once. The whole building's empty. Your job to get it ready for when everybody comes back. And everybody comes back in the next couple of weeks. That type of
So you would oversee the contracting teams. Did you kind of oversaw that process, or what was your involvement within that?
Yeah, so I had the contract with the actual universities. I actually, I started off doing it just at the University of Kentucky, where I was from. And then I actually franchised out different locations or had like regional partnerships with like some of my teammates around the country. who would do the same thing at their, where they were living at. Because there's a universities close to somewhere everywhere, right?
Right.
And this is going on across the country where students have move outs and move ins.
Dude, I have to ask you this because you got my wheels turning. What kind of condition were some of those dorms in? Like, what were some of the craziest stuff that you saw?
Yeah. Well, I went to Huntington, West Virginia, and that's got to be, some of the worst, kept rooms I've seen. So there's some things, it's really interesting in student housing and space and real estate where, they build up these large, like Class A buildings,
right,
with all these amenities and things of that nature. But kids are going to be kids regardless, right? And
they go beat them
parents,
up.
Yeah, the parents want their kids to live in the best and have the best and those different types of things like that. But yeah, flipping those units, I bet the parents would want to flip those units. That's what I was.
That would be telling. We so a buddy of ours who's a coworker on our team, he was a property manager for a student housing facility, and dude, he has some crazy stories about some like parties that he had to shut down. Police were getting called. I mean, wild stuff. So yeah, if you can do that, you can do anything.
Yeah, no, it was definitely an interesting space. But as soon as I've seen a technology way to get away from that space, I quickly bolted. So I did say if anybody does need some mentoring or consulting on how to do that business, I'll let them know.
Man.
So you moved from that business where you were turning college dorms, and what did you transition into?
Yeah, I transitioned into EZOS. It started off originally called Easy Turn. Hence the name was what I was doing was turn. And I created a software basically that allowed for property managers of student housing to better work with vendors that were coming on their site to flip those units. So a direct problem that I was experiencing, a direct problem that I was seeing from the property manager's standpoint, we digitized that process. They would give me a piece of paper previously, and we made that basically a piece of paper that we made it on an app where essentially I could say, I'm done with this room, all those different type of things like that. They had real-time updates on where the project was in real time. So that's where we started off at. It's evolved into a full property management operation system where we focus on, a lot of the machine learning and AI behind routing maintenance operations to the right individuals who can do those jobs. So we still have that aspect of being the best product when it comes to vendor relationships with property management. But now we're able to say, hey, we can take your staff, we can take a vendor, we can take anybody, and we can know their skill set, their capacity, their capability, and we'll route whatever issues or preventative maintenance that needs to be done, tenant service requests that come in, and we'll route those to the right individuals who can do the best job at those specific needs of the site. So
just to give people some context, if you're listening to this, because we have a lot of active investors and even passive investors that probably would like to know how their operators are handling property management. People who want to get into real estate in a passive nature are entrusting someone else to do the day in, day out tasks that are very intensive. And so just to give some people some context, you were responsible. Let's talk real numbers here. One of the universities, University of Kentucky. Do you say that was one of your vendors, your partnerships? Yep. How many dorms were you responsible to turn, and how much time did you have to do it?
It was 3,500 units, 7,000 beds, and
dude, that's a lot.
We had 2.5 months. Including the camps that came in. So the camps would come in like cheerleading camp, football camp, whatever it is. They stay in the dorm a day, and you got to fill that. You got to flip those quickly in the same time where you're trying to just get everything done for the same moving day. So it's a lot of.
They literally wanted you to touch every 3,500 units.
Yep, everything. Yep.
That's wild. That's a logistical nightmare. Okay, so you just are tasked with this, and you're trying to figure out, well, obviously I want to do a good job for the university to maintain these contracts and, have business and let word get out and do this again and replicate it. So that sent you on a journey of automation. That was kind of born out of your own desire in your business. But it sounds like you realized that was a pain point that was never going to go away for the university, even after your company left and successfully did those turns, right?
Yeah.
So talk about how, you guys went to build out this app. What were some of the challenges that you had?
And how'd you, and let's even go back to, you wanted to build out an app. What did you do even to build out an app? Do you have a background in technologies? Did you find the right people? Give us some context on how does someone just go and build a software?
Yeah. I think I was a lot more naive than I was then than I was now. I thought I would build something and just put it in the app store and just like it'd sit there, be passive income type of situation. It's definitely not that. Ever since we built it, it's been, full staff technology team, all those different type of things like that, where there's something that needs to be done at all times, whether your customers or your clients are asking for this and all. So it's turned into a whole, whole thing from our original thought. But how we did it was, I had to find a co-founder. I found a co-founder who had operational experience. So I only had the vendor knowledge. He had the operational experience. It was a facilities director, regional manager for large apartment complexes and around the area and city. He had a similar idea of like, hey, this piece of paper is causing us to have a gap in communication, which is both causing us to be bad at our jobs. So he wanted to fix that. I wanted to fix it. We got together. We basically drew up screens on like printed off iPads, blank iPad screens on a binder, and just drew the basics that what we know is like log in. All right, this button goes here type situation.
Whoa.
Took this folder about this thick and took it to somebody who was local. We didn't outsource it. I didn't want to do like my first project and like outsource development to like overseas and stuff like that. We took it down the street, got some bids, got like 3 bids from some development shops.
Wow.
Took the best bid, and it cost us a little bit of money, but we also had customers day one once we got it finished. So
you kind of got the lay of the land on what you wanted the app to do, all the pages it was going to direct people to, and you took that binder and you handed it over to a developer and said, "Hey, make this."
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
Well, and just to I think you're oversimplifying it a little bit. When you're drawing that stuff on those little iPad screens, essentially you're downloading your brain and your knowledge of any task that would need to be done, managed, delegated in that from start to finish, full service into that binder, hand it to somebody, and that they would be able to read that and have a working knowledge on how to do what you're asking them to do.
Yeah, no, it definitely was a brain dump, and I definitely won our biggest advantage at that time because we were first movers in that category of technology, which was then at the time called Turn Software, and we were first people to that market. And one of the things that we realized looking back on it is the fact that we took first movers advantage is not always advantage because you're actually creating a product that doesn't have a budget line attached to it, customer standpoint.
Right.
We're trying to sell something that they never heard of or never thought about paying for when they can do it on spreadsheets and they do it how they've previously done it, where, we've done it like this since colleges have been in existence, right? But
yeah, you were asking them to kill the sacred cow.
Yeah. Like we can also drive horses and carriages out here if we want to, but we're choosing to ride Teslas, so it's just we had to basically, that was probably one of our most difficult parts about this was like trying to convince people to change. 4 years later, and we are, a name brand in the industry. People know us as that product for when it comes to being the best in the turn space. But the first year or two, it was convincing a lot of people.
So your operational partner who was actually managing some of these properties and responsible to get you, the contractor, to do what you needed to do in the timeline that he had to report, to the university and his higher ups. So did you guys then beta test this in some of the properties that he was actively involved in?
Well, once he worked with us, he was full time. So,
so you cherry picked him.
Our first client was University of Kentucky.
Okay.
Our first client was University of Kentucky, and I guess you can call it a beta, but we had to make we charged for the product for sure.
Yeah. So how did you actually show them, bottom line, this is going to save you in man hours or in dollars?
Well, I knew how much money they were spending because I was one of the clients that was getting paid. So I knew how much money they were putting in that space to get ready for the school year. And if you think about it, like what's more important than them making sure that the dorms are ready for the students when they get to campus? Like if you really think about how much money the university, where they need to put their money at, they need to make sure that the kids have a space to live. That's their product, right? Like,
Yeah.
so essentially they put everything that they can into making sure that those dorms are ready, and however they can make that process easier. I wasn't worried about the budget. I was more so worried about showing the value.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, to your point, you understood what their goals were, and
Yeah.
therefore you could kind of align your platform to address that.
Yeah.
So, who is this? Just a application for student rentals?
No, so now, I mean, it used to be, but now, we move into multifamily. We are actually about to launch this Airbnb piece to our platform as well
Mm.
for people that are hosting Airbnbs and things of that nature. But it's really real estate agnostic. If you have bricks, you have buildings, and you need maintenance, we're the best solution that we think in that process, where we automate the maintenance needs of your asset and get it to people who provide those solutions.
So if I come, like, hey, wow, this sounds great, streamlining. I self-manage, and I think I could use this application to just be my own property manager and make it a lot easier on my life.
Yeah.
Are you connecting me with vendors in my area, or do I come to you with a list that I like to work with, and then you just kind of streamline the communication between those existing relationships?
It's both, honestly. And that's another funny story, is that, like, after I got done, and this is also a little bit of how I got into this space in general, was after I got done playing in the league, I had my first real estate investment property. And I was like, all right, that's cool. Let me just count up my income. This is how much my rent is. This is going to get this for a year, that type of situation. Not even thinking about a tenant requesting needs or service requests or anything like that. So I'm really, what we're really doing is solving that problem that I had originally as a owner, operator, property manager of one of my single family units that I used to have, right? And it's the fact that I didn't really have those connections. I didn't know who could do what, when they could do it, who was available, what the quality of services they're capable of providing. And so when I look back on it, if I had my system EZOS currently, it would speed up my education gap tremendously by just picking up the software, right? Allow for me to miss these speed bumps that a lot of people are hitting and learning. And once you get to become an advanced property manager, you may not technically need something like our software, but the real value is at the people that are just starting. And you're like, hey, I'm trying to do this. You guys help me do it good. I like to compare it to like Canva, or like maybe even ChatGPT, where essentially you sign up for Canva and you become a better designer, right? Like, I don't do designs outside of Canva no more, because like it makes me better at what I'm trying to do, right? And I don't
Right.
definitely, and if I can ask it to ChatGPT, like I'm going to ask it ChatGPT, like just to double check it, because I'm assuming that knowledge and that intelligence of that software is giving me better value to what I'm doing on my side. And that's how we want people to see EZOS. Is like, when you pick up and use this, we make intelligent routing decisions for your needs of your property for you.
Explain that. So, like, let's say I have a tenant and they submit a work order for a leaky toilet. This is actually a real scenario at one of my properties, and it's a 2-story, so it's leaking into the bottom unit. And lo and behold, we get a work order from the lower unit too, because they're like, hey, there's water coming through the ceiling.
Yep.
What happens? How are you guys facilitating that process?
Yep. So if you have internal staff, you'll set your internal staff up. If you have internal vendors that you use, we'll set your internal vendors up. You will set up their capacity, their skill sets, what they're able to do from that standpoint, from your guys' side of the fence. And basically we control their schedules. They have an app on their phone that has their schedule of work that needs to be done. So anybody that's doing work through your property management system should be running through our app, if that makes sense. So as we are seeing things come in, we are able to categorize things as what is priority, what is not priority, and being able to route them to the people that have those skill sets and who can do it the soonest, right? So we can even take into account, let's say, hey, all the people that I like working with are busy. They won't be able to get to it until next week. We can then go to our vendor marketplace, which we've been curating over these years of just individual service providers, and supplement your workforce with somebody that you may have never done business with, right? But who we've had the experience of seeing in their historical track record. So just that capability allows for us to say anything that comes into our system, we route it out to the right solutions based on your preferences as a property manager or operator owner.
So
without you having anything.
So I guess the point, would be I on board.
Yeah.
I'm like, here's the HVAC guy I usually use. Here's the plumber I usually use. Here's the electrician I usually use. Okay. I put all those kind of in the system when we onboard with EZOS. I give you their contact information. And then what's the expectation? Do you guys reach out to these contractors and say, hey, download this app so we can give you work?
Yeah.
Or am I trying to convince these contractors to spend time to download the app? Or how's that kind of work when you're a small operation? I'm thinking like 10 units or less. Where
So
you might not be giving them a ton of business, or they're like, hey, I don't want to spend my time.
doing that, right? So our system is, we have a whole side of our system for the vendors, right? Like they sign up into our platform. We've built like 7,000, 8,000 vendors in our system just based off property managers bringing in the people that they've used previously that they like, you know what I'm saying? And from there, we automatically create their account. All they have to do is send them a login, say, hey, these people want to use you at their property. Go here. This is where you'll see your work. Anytime they'll get work, they'll get a notification through their system. But even outside of that, as soon as they're in our system, they are a part of our marketplace where they can receive business outside of the business with you guys, right? So they automatically get opened up to a new community of opportunities, similar to like a Thumbtack or something like that, right? Where they're just maybe like a contractor type situation. So it's big. Like it's for me personally, being a vendor previously, like one of the things I wanted to make sure was not to lose sight of where the vendor's importance is in this process, right? And what do they want? And really, when I was a small business, what I wanted was an easier way to build my business. And that's what we can help them do.
So anybody else in Northwest Ohio, if they onboard with EZOS, essentially my vendors would be kind of in that vendor pool in case they didn't have their own. And, you know, it's a way to feed business to those vendors.
Yep. And so hopefully at this point, and hopefully it allows for people to get the best work because we keep track of how good their work is, we manage the payment process through the system. We allow for the quality control piece to be done by the property management or the owner operator, right? So essentially it's not paid out unless it's satisfactory to them from that side of the fence. And we keep track of a concept called go backs, where they have to come back to fix something or do something else for the actual work. And in that process, now we're able to create this data that allows for us to improve our matching algorithm and our routing algorithm that says, you know, we don't want to overwork this one person. So, so when I was talking about capacity, that's what I'm talking about, right? Like this person is only going to be able to do a good job, like 4 or 5 of these a day type situation, and not 20 or 30 type situation. So that's where the system comes in and being smart in the algorithm.
So is this a replacement for our property management software?
We work alongside property management softwares. We work alongside the Appfolios. We work alongside the Entradas, Real Pages, MRIs, and things of that nature. So I wouldn't necessarily consider it a replacement. Could it replace it? It depends on how big your operation is, right? Like if it was somebody that was 10 units or less, you may not need the rental income and the leasing piece that much, right? Like maybe you can do that in a different form or fashion. Then it takes the whole PMS system. Like we are operations and maintenance, and we try to handle that process to the T. So if you just wanted to use that system and then handle your rent as you currently handle it, like I don't know how they do it, Cash App, whatever. But you know, if you don't need that piece and you just want the maintenance automated, we will be a perfect solution for that.
Now, is it a la carte, or does somebody come on as a user and they get the full service of like, yeah, I would use your payment collection and tenant, screening and all of that stuff?
Yeah, it's all comes with our system. So all comes under system, unlimited users, unlimited team, all those different types of things. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, everything comes with it. That's why we're really excited about we have a pricing model that is like a minimum of $50 per month per property. But essentially, if you have under 10 units in our system, we give it to you for free, and we'll just make money off the transactions.
So let me hit you with this. We're in a market where a lot of people have single-family houses as rentals, okay? And so maybe one property, it's not a 100-unit multi-property, but it could be a portfolio of 35 single-family houses. How would you guys price that if it's $50 per property, but it's over 10 units?
Yeah, so what we would look at is if you want to consider one building a unit, you can do that. Or you could consider like, hey, I have 35 units from that perspective in one building. It depends on how you want to break it down in our system, which some people look at it differently based on how they LLC legal setup, finances is running through, different types of things like that. So you could set up a full portfolio of 35 underneath one account and only be charged the $50 minimum, the $50 account right there. Or if you set
Gotcha.
up individual accounts for each property, then you would be looking at $50 each.
Well, I think this is definitely something that if you're an investor, even if you're self-managing, you should take a hard look at this, because there's no reason you should be still collecting paper applications or, doing the paper format. There's so many applications and resources out there in their own right. And then, EZOS, you guys have brought it in-house into one application, which we're all striving and grappling for more, less noise in our heads, because we're constantly barraged with all these different things. So I think it's really awesome what you guys are doing.
What I like about it is that it takes care. I mean, it sounds like it takes care of the payment to the contractor on the back end. So, and that's part of how you guys make your money, right? Is I would pay through the operating system,
Yep.
and then you guys would forward that to the contractor, and it probably gives me some sort of receipt still for my records and whatnot. But I'm not tracking down a contractor and dropping off a check or mailing a check. Because that's what I'm currently doing. And most contractors around here don't even have an option to pay with card. So I'm like tracking people down to pay them my money. So
so we work similar to, and this is one of our newest bits, is like we've built it to where we've always wanted to keep control of the transaction. We thought the more value that we had as a tech company was going to be the closer we could stay to the money that was transacting. And most companies have focused on, in the prop tech space, have focused on rent from the tenant down to the property. But we've tried to focus our close-knitness to where the money is flowing from the actual property side down to the actual service provider side. So, and we see it as a large market opportunity, right? I think that I read that you should save $1 for every square footage of real estate that you have just for maintenance annually, right? So we want to try to make sure that flows through us, and that's why we're willing to give it to the smaller people or the smaller portfolios for free, and just manage the building through that way.
That's awesome. That's cool.
All right, we're going to jump into our smaller pockets segment. So, Chase, go ahead and tell us about a real estate deal gone wrong. It could be something with your personal real estate portfolio, or as you've built this business, what was something that went wrong and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so I'll take a funniest story. So since we've already talked about the terms at the University of Kentucky, I'm sure you can imagine that there's some messes there. So there was one time, and there's these camps that I was talking about that come in and out of these buildings on a daily, like cheerleading camp will come in one day and they'll bring another cheerleading camp 24 hours later type situation. So one of these nights, we were doing a 24-hour turnaround, flip clean for University of Kentucky of about probably like 700 to 800 units in one building.
In 24 hours.
Yeah, in 24 hours.
Dude.
And my team told me this, they were going to stay overnight and get it done throughout the night.
Nice.
Right? So here I am, trusting me and my team. These are my family members, like cousins, things of that nature, right? So I'm like, all right, yeah, sure, they're going to get it. I get there at about 7 a.m. in the morning. I get there at 7 a.m. in the morning, and I can't find these guys anywhere. And I'm calling their phones. They're not answering. They're not listening. The cheerleading camp is downstairs checking in at this moment, and none of this building is cleaned. None of the building is cleaned, and they are asleep in one of these dorm rooms.
No.
Haven't done anything throughout the entire night, and now here we are about to move in all these high school girls into these rooms that haven't been cleaned yet. So. And yeah, so you can already imagine how much of a mess that was with that situation. So
what do you do? What do you learn from that? Not trust your family?
Get a bucket. A bucket. Yeah, so you start cleaning immediately. But what I learned from it from a business standpoint was to not expect heroics from anybody that's not an owner in this space.
Oh, yeah, right. Because you're thinking, like, I would be, if you were there, you'd be doing it,
Like Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, we'll do it
Trust
tonight.
but verify. So what was the outcome? I mean, you probably had some fires to put out then. You got some pressure
Yeah,
put on
well,
you.
the outcome was us cleaning, like pretty much as they were moving in. Like, all right, you're in this room, 312. All right, let's go in here and knock it out real quick. All right, you're good. Next person. All right, you're good.
Wow.
Next person. So that like type situation where it was that, but and the parents are with them, so it's really they were like, hey, let me get this type situation, but it was a lot and definitely a lesson.
I think being a business owner, being in that seat, there comes a point where, and I'm not saying this for you, so I'm not speaking for you, but for myself, when you have the opportunity to trust something to somebody, could be within your company or a service that you rely on, there is that temptation. And I think it comes from a place of laziness where you're like, I'm going to actually just take them at their word. And it's more, I hope they get it done versus I actually trust they're competent to follow through on it. And and then you realize, like, you know what? The one time.
Is this pointed at me?
Yeah.
Listen, if you feel guilty about that, it's up to you, man. No, I was kidding. All right. Great story. We're going to go into what we call our little nugget. So, Chase, this is part of our show where you give us one practical takeaway, piece of advice to our listeners that they can implement to their real estate investing businesses. So let's try something we haven't talked about yet. Could be something in your personal development, could be a leadership principle that you learned as you're, through being a college athlete, being in the NFL. We're leaving it open-ended for you to take it whatever way you want.
Okay. I would probably say, I think there's some risk in not thinking that just because it's not broke, that doesn't need to be rethought from that standpoint, right? Like sometimes we got to come back and rethink how we doing things the best way as currently sits today. Because if you sit in the path where you're not changing as of today, when you get down a couple months, a couple years from now, you'll be further behind than where you were two years ago from that standpoint. So I think that's where I would focus on is, and that would just lean into like always learning. There's nothing that it costs to learn about it. Picking up, learning new things, trying new things. Doesn't mean you have to recreate how you're doing the entire process. But if something turns out and you see the value in the return, and you're like, all right, now I want to change the process, then let's go down that route. This is how we're going to be better. This is how we're going to be better.
So I know you guys brought a new idea kind of to the marketplace. And so that was part of the messaging to these, longtime property owners and managers was, hey, open up your mind to a new way of doing things. But how have you guys done that within your company to relook at things just continually, that attitude of just, nothing is sacred here. We're going to look at it with fresh eyes and always get better.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm always about, like, one of my big things is like not showing up the same way. Like I refuse to show up the same exact way every year. So when December comes around, I regroup. I look at everything from a totality standpoint and look at what I want to try and change this year. One of the things that I've never done before previously was use Salesforce. I'm a small business owner. I use Excel, use my CRM for this, and this. This year we implemented Salesforce. Just to try and do things differently and bring new strategy to the table. I believe that, you can't believe that there's not a better way to do things.
Right.
The only way to figure that out is to go see what else is out there.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's good. What's been one of the best resources in your business development?
I would probably say staying active on marketing. And then also, not trying to do things you're not good at. You know what I'm saying? Like, like not trying to do things you're not good at, I think is important. Like just really trying to place yourself in places where only you can be valuable in those things. Like sometimes we try to do things, especially from a business owner standpoint, where we feel like we got to do this, got to do that, got to do this, when somebody else can do that way better than what you can do it. And really the time that you've put into it is really wasted everybody's time.
Wow. Right. Think you're helping. Maybe it's an ego thing, got to check the ego at the door. That's good. That's good. So how can people find out more about you, follow your success, learn more about the platform? What's the best way for them to get connected?
Yeah, so probably LinkedIn, I would say, is probably the best way these days.
Okay.
Chase Minniefield. our website is www.ezos.co. We're doing some cool things. I know we could do a whole other podcast on how machine learning AI is going to affect real estate market. That's one of the big things that we're talking about and we're implementing and trying to be ahead of the game with. So if you guys want to follow any of our podcasts or webinars or newsletters and things like that, we're talking a lot about AI and how it's affecting property management, specifically things that we're doing around it.
Awesome. Well, dude, thank you for taking time to unfold some of this stuff. I love how the vision for the application even began, and it was just very organic, birthed out of a pain point that you saw and experienced yourself, so that your family member wouldn't ever put you in a position again to leave you high and dry on 700 unit turns in 24 hours. But awesome, man. Well, hey, blessings to you, and thanks for jumping on today.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
As always, excited that you joined us on another episode of the Reinvest Podcast. If this episode added to your tool belt or left you feeling inspired, go ahead and share it with a friend. Stay tuned every Tuesday for new episodes. And if you want to get in touch with us, go to our LinkedIn or Facebook profiles and shoot us a message. Move farther, reach higher, and grow deeper. See you next time.